Today on The Kickback.
I personally, if I could just speak to the people protesting and those on the front lines, it's that, your efforts and everything that you're doing, though it'll be demonized and though it'll be villainized and though police will continue to brutalize you, despite your best intentions, what you're doing is necessary. And it's important that you continue to march and you continue to do what you guys are doing, because those Black men and women who have died, like nobody marched for them. Nobody was there for them when they were dying, when they were, taking their last breath. Nobody was there to protect Trayvon Martin. Nobody was there to protect Emmett Till or Tamir Rice or Sandra Bland or Castile. This is your opportunity now to make sure that those voices and those lives do not die in vain.
What's up, what's up, what's up? It's your girl Dom, and welcome back to The Kickback. Today's topic is not something I would usually bring to my platform. However, as a Black woman, I feel as though I need to use my voice to spread awareness on what's going on in the US. Today, I have with me 8 Black Ivy League students who are going to share about their Black experience, tips they have, and how they're coping with what's going on in the world right now. So let's head to The Kickback. Hello, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of The Kickback. Today, I have a Black student from every single Ivy League here to talk to you guys about police brutality. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and I wanted to bring awareness from some of the most intelligent students in the country on this topic. So first, I'm going to have them all introduce themselves, starting with Harvard.
What's up, everybody? My name's Eric. I'm a sophomore. I go to Harvard, and I'm studying sociology.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Glover. I'm a rising senior. I'm from Atlanta. I'm majoring in finance and minoring in music.
Hello, everyone. My name is Demi. I'm a senior at Dartmouth, and I'm studying government with a minor in Middle Eastern Studies.
What's up, everybody? My name is Ikenna. I'm a rising junior at Columbia, and I'm double majoring in biology and neuroscience on the pre-med track.
Hey guys, I'm Nem. I'm a rising senior, and I'm studying public health.
Hi everyone, I'm Nina. I'm a rising junior at Yale, and I am studying political science.
What's up, everybody? My name is Falarin. I'm a rising junior at Princeton, studying neuroscience with a certificate in African American Studies.
Hey, I'm Cache. I'm a recent Cornell graduate. I studied interdisciplinary studies.
So for any viewer that is watching right now that doesn't know what Black Lives Matter means, can anyone define it for them so that we're all on the same page of what that slogan means?
I definitely think it's just a movement that is combating institutional racism and combating police brutality.
Right. Black Lives Matter is calling attention to the fact that Black lives are disproportionately devalued in American society, and emphasizing the fact that we, in fact, do matter.
So my next question is, for people who say all lives matter, what would you have to them?
Especially if they're responding to Black Lives Matter with all lives matter, I would say that it is an inappropriate response. That's not the purpose of Black Lives Matter, to emphasize the fact that Black lives matter more than any other life, but to call attention to the fact that Black lives, as I said, are disproportionately devalued in American society and need to be valued as much as all lives do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can all agree that every different community has its own issues. But I think when you are starting a movement to focus on the issues that disproportionately affect one community, it kind of gets disrespectful when you try to just divert the attention away from that. And all that ever serves to do is start these different conversations about, oh, what this community goes through that and that community goes through that. But I don't think anyone's trying to take away from other communities. But when you're focusing on one community, which is the African-American Black population in America, I think it's important to be able to stay on topic and to be able to seriously address all the things that disproportionately affect African Americans.
I'd also just like to add, I think the Black Lives Matter movement really calls to the importance of solidarity across communities. Just because you're not Black and maybe you don't experience it, racism and institutional racism, and might not fully understand it, doesn't mean you still can't be a big part of the movement, if that makes sense.
How has seeing your white peers and influencer celebrities not posting about or sharing information, spreading awareness about Black Lives Matter, made you feel?
I know for me personally, when I do see people remain silent, it's a little scary. I mean, because you think these people really like you, and if they really like you, then they would support publicly. And a lot of the time, it's not the case. So I've talked to plenty of my white friends about how they can help. And I do tell them that, supporting publicly is a way, at least for me, that shows support, and it makes me feel good.
I think just seeing my white counterparts and, you know, members of colored communities that are not Black, so non-Black POC, stay silent. It kind of illuminated for me that, you know, when people indulge in Black culture and when people profit off of Black culture, they are simply doing that, you know, appreciating the culture and not acknowledging the humanity of the people that provide that culture. You know, I have a lot of, you know, white counterparts who love athletes like LeBron James or rappers like Kendrick Lamar. And then seeing the silence made me realize you do not love LeBron James, nor you do not love Kendrick Lamar. You love the art he produces. You love the athleticism of LeBron James, because if you really appreciated what the Black community has continuously given this country, then it would be common sense when the Black community is under attack. You would come to our aid, you would be vocal, and you would help us fight this oppression we're experiencing.
Unless they are benefiting from the Black community or benefiting from a specific Black individual, that they are not here for our people. And unless someone has accolades, like you were saying, LeBron James, Kendrick Lamar, unless you can tie an accolade to a name for a white person or a non-Black person, it doesn't really hold any weight. It's just like if you're a regular Black person walking down the street, you won't have the same sentiment as someone's favorite rap artist or someone's favorite athlete. And that just shows that the disrespect for the entire community is a problem. And when your favorite celebrities, and I'm not saying, because even Black celebrities who are profiting off of, you know, this capitalist society are not speaking out, or like, stop looting, it's hurting my business and my money. Like, it just shows that there's a lot of different things at work right now. And, you know, you have to figure out who is really standing for the value of the Black life and not the value of like what we can produce for this world and this economy.
It's just really scary because you have these people that have been profiting off of Black people, profiting off of our culture, profiting off of us, and then they're not speaking out against it. It seems like they're more complicit and just okay with maintaining the status quo rather than making a change. They don't actually care, and that's the scary part about it. And then they have their fans, they're probably thinking that, okay, it's okay to not speak out against it because I'm not speaking out against it. And that's where things get really dangerous.
I remember a few years ago, after what happened in Ferguson, in an interview, A$AP Rocky was sort of asked to speak about on his opinions on what happened. And he said, I don't want to talk about what happened in Ferguson. I live in Soho and Bel Air. I can't relate. So I think it's really interesting. And this is someone who grew up in New York, comes from a low-income family who experienced racism growing up until he came up. And now that, you know, he's come into all this fame and has the support of the Black community, and for him to say something like that, but even what surprised me more was the fact that people didn't really care, honestly. Like, they didn't really react. They were like, yeah, I mean, he can't relate, but like, I feel like that's no excuse. Like,
I definitely agree with that. I wanted to build on that. It was a while back where Donald Trump took shots at LeBron James and, you know, was mentioning how unintelligent LeBron James is, which is far from the truth. And they were, you know, somebody asked Michael Jordan about these comments, and Michael Jordan didn't comment because, in his words, Republicans buy Jordans too. And just through that commentary and through that experience, it made me realize that, you know, as Black people attain success and attain wealth and attain influence, you know, capitalism has a way of ostracizing us from the rest of our community. And it gets to the point where we stop being willing to relate. And it's not like we stop understanding, but we stop being willing to be vocal. We start prioritizing wealth, and we start prioritizing the fame, and forget that 5-10 years ago, we were once those people going through that same struggle and going through that same thing. And it never really stops. Even when you get to that fame, LeBron James's house was vandalized with the N-word just a couple years back. So it just shows that as we gain fame, it doesn't stop, but certain people refuse to engage with it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I mean, since you brought up Trump, I guess we could get into him a little bit right now. I think, although after the fact about these like atrocious things happening, but I think for me, the next level of anger came in the different types of responses that came from, whether it be the president or different politicians to these different things. Because first you had a couple weeks ago, the white people in Minneapolis protesting with automatic weapons right in the face of the police, and there was zero response to them. And they were yelling about things like, oh, we want to get our hair cut, like that's some sort of thing that's going to affect your life in any major way. And then less than a month later, in the very same location, people are peacefully protesting the death of a black man, and they get met with this violence. And when Trump tweets about the people who want to get the haircuts, the thing is, oh, these are good people and they want good things. But when it's black people protesting their civil rights, it's, oh, these are thugs and they need to be. And he said, what was it, like, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And then he tried to back out of that, like, oh, I wasn't saying that this is like, we're going to start killing these people. But we know what you meant by that. And even just tweeting that in the first place has done way too much damage. And you are the president of the United States of America. You cannot even be putting things out there that can be interpreted in any sort of violent way like that. So it's just the response. And even back to the athletes, when you had Colin Kaepernick kneeling and he was called a thug, and you have people in Charlottesville who are racist, they're good people on both sides. It's just the responses to both sides are just so much more insulting and just make you so much angrier.
For viewers who aren't Black, they obviously respond to police a little bit differently than we are raised to respond to police. So for those watching who don't know how we are trained to respond, can anybody give them a rundown of what your parents taught you when a police is behind you, driving behind you, or comes up to your window, how you're supposed to react to them?
Well, so like my dad always told me, like, especially like in terms of like traffic stops or like whenever you're stopped by the police, it's always to be like, always be very calm, even though like they might say or do something that like might piss you off. Also things like making sure like your hands are visible at all times. Just honestly, just keeping a cool demeanor, asking permission to like reach for certain stuff.
For sure. My mother takes it a step further and tells me, prop your phone somewhere and, record, when you got stopped. She also says, keep your hands on your steering wheel. Don't move a muscle. Literally, if you feel your head itches, don't even move that. And that's just ridiculous that, Black parents have to go to those measures these days. And it really shows that there needs to be some form of reform that happens right now, honestly.
From the parents' perspective, it's always like it's kind of sad, but it's like be submissive to the officer and like to their instructions, to what like their feelings. Like although you might very well they very well might be in the wrong or you're highly upset, it's like you must be submissive in that situation.
My parents at least have told me that everything that I do when approached by a police officer is under a microscope. So make sure that you won't do anything to give them a reason to escalate the situation.
Yeah, and also kind of like what Demi said, I remember the one time that I was pulled over and just the irrational amount of fear that I was feeling from something just as simple as, he said I was speeding. I don't think I was speeding. That's a whole different conversation. I saw the lights behind me and I put my hands on the steering wheel and like my heart was just beating faster than it ever had. And just thinking that should not be the natural reaction from seeing the people who are supposed to be protecting you. And just, it was a very fearful moment for me. And then that just made you realize that when you see all these things in the media about police killing Black people, you realize it has an effect on you even when you don't think it might.
I do recall like my mom just being really afraid when the police was behind her. Like we wouldn't be doing anything wrong, but she would just be afraid and she would say, "Hey, the police is behind us." And that's always stuck with me. And even now, driving back home, I get so much anxiety just when the police is behind me, when they're nearby. I could be driving the speed limit and my heart is pounding.
On campus, so around like final season, it was like maybe 3 a.m. I was walking home from the library to my dorm on like the one street, Thayer Street, and it was raining. It was a bit rainy, and this officer is cruising next to me, and like he opens his window and he's like, "Oh, it's raining. Do you want to ride home?" I'm like, "No, thank you, sir." And like I'm just like really scared because it's 3 a.m. Like there's nobody else on the street, and I'm thinking, since when does an officer just pull up next to you because it's drizzling to ask you for a ride home? I would go even as far as to like, if I'm like in the vicinity of an officer, just like look away, turn away. Like even if you're not in a car, like literally if you're just standing there, because like they can just approach you for any kind of reason.
For me, advice I received growing up was to narrate your steps, narrate the things that you're doing to the officer. For example, when I was in high school, I went to high school in Manhattan, so pretty far from where I live. So I had to take the train, and one day I ran out of money on my Metro, so I thought I was slick, and I went through the emergency exit, and I wasn't slick at all because the officer came and he stopped me, and he asked to see my ID, my student ID. So advice I received was like, I would be like, I'm going into my pocket where my wallet is at. I'm pulling out my wallet. This is my ID. because any sudden movements, any sort of thing, and I'm dark skinned, I'm tall, that those are two things that are always weaponized against Black men, that those features that we have. So just narrating the things that you're doing so that he can't claim that he was afraid. He can't claim that he didn't know what you were doing because you told him straight up, my wallet is in my right pocket. I'm going to get my wallet to get my ID to show you.
Now we can showcase to everyone watching that we were taught the right steps of how to deal with police approaching us, but yet still we see on the media police brutality all the time. So in you guys' opinion, do you feel like the police departments need to remove guns, period? Do you feel like they need resources? Do they need education on biases? What is it that the police departments need to fix this problem?
I think that the institution of the police force has kind of capitalized on the fear that, a gun or the use of lethal force or the use of aggressive force can have. And so I personally think that bias training won't be enough to undo the culture of violence. And so I think, yes, lethal force needs to be removed completely.
I would also say, in the addition of like the removal of lethal force, I feel as though police officers really need to be trained more extensively. I know in many states, it just takes 8 weeks training in the police academy, something short, very short like that. And I feel like that is just not sufficient enough time for them to really understand their role, what is okay, what's not okay. Like, they really do need to understand the specifications of the law.
Usually the police officers that are like patrolling these neighborhoods aren't actually the people that are living there. So like if the people that are living in these communities, like the leaders in those communities are actually being given the resources to be able to deal with like issues surrounding like crime and also other issues pertaining to like just how their community operates, I think that's like effective in terms of like creating a culture where like the community members are like making it more of a priority to be able to keep their community safe. And in that way, like police officers aren't be given all the power.
I'm a little bit more radical on this point. I'm like, abolish the police, abolish ICE. Like that's my stance on it. And I know a lot of people come back and like, what do you mean? Like, we need some sort of protection for our communities. Having another slideshow for a police officer about, listen, like, don't be racist, like, and like trying to move them towards that. Like, it's so many years of police, attacking Black people in different situations, in different time periods, where it's like, this is who they are, this is what they do, and this is what the system has allowed for so long, that yes, there might not be all bad police officers, and like there actually might be police officers from the community serving their communities, but we have a larger issue at work. What can we do to change it? And I don't think changing a training session, having an extra day, an extra 2 months is going to change history and what police feel like they can do.
I agree with that, but just taking it a step further, I think that police have shown that when they choose to, they have the training and the capability to be cordial and to be professional, especially when dealing with white people and white criminals. For example, Dylan Roof, who went into a church and killed dozens of families, was apprehended peacefully. White people were protesting with AK-47s and weapons that have the capability of slaughtering all those police that were there. No reaction was levied towards them, because they realized that no reaction was necessary. So having a system in place, or having some sort of culture in place, maybe where they take that same cordiality and that same understanding and translate it to Black communities. And I really don't know how to go about doing that. I really don't know how to make that mentality translate to Black people, because they've shown that they don't want to give us that same respect and that same benefit of the doubt. But in terms of what needs to happen, in my opinion, is just that change of mindset.
There's this Chris Rock joke where it's like, you can't have American Airlines be like, oh, we have a few bad pilots, so sorry they don't land the plane sometimes, but the rest of them do. There's just certain situations where you can't afford to have those few bad apples, because the damage that they do is so widespread and destructive and pervasive. So that's just something to people who are like, oh, it's just a few bad apples and you can't be freaking out over that. That's simply not the case. The damage that those few bad apples do is way too much.
You said that we need to change, like there needs to be some way to change the mindset and let these cops be cordial, like have the same cordial interaction with Black folk. And like my reaction is like, good for white people that they have the privilege for cops to treat them like human beings. Like I'm sorry, I'm not going to clap for them for doing what they should be doing, but they only do it when they want to, and they only do it when it's with another white person. You said like change the mindset. I feel like that's a big role just for a police, like for the institution of policing, because it is a larger issue for American culture. Like this is what we're going through when we interact with people on the daily. We live in an environment where no one is being mellow with a Black person, or I'm not saying no one, but like where, you know, racism is an issue.
I think also if we started holding people accountable and started handing out some life sentences, that some officers might not think that they were so invincible and might actually think twice before, you know, committing such acts.
What are you guys' opinions on the looting and any destruction that's been occurring? Do you think that it's beneficial, or do you think it's setting us back?
I personally think in terms of means of protest, the means that you should adopt we should adopt as a people is the means that is effective. So when we tried peaceful protest, you know, with Colin Kaepernick, we tried, you know, sitting in, we tried conversations, they distorted that whole protest entirely. Colin Kaepernick was kicked out of the NFL, and they distorted the entire message that we were trying to get across with, oh, you're disrespecting the troops, you're disrespecting the flag. You know, you should be grateful, Colin Kaepernick, that you have this $1 million paying job. And he was just like, no, this has nothing to do with y'all. This has to do with the police brutality that Black communities are experiencing. So that didn't work, right? When we marched peacefully, that didn't work. So now it seems like now we're actually getting some attention doing this looting and this rioting. And, you know, people, it shows that they care more about their institutions and their buildings and their money than the people who give them all those institutions and their profit and their money. And if it means we have to take some of that back through violence for you to sit down and actually hear our plight, then I feel like the most effective means should be adopted. It's unfortunate that we've had to go this far, but I honestly think the Black community is showing a lot of restraint in what we're doing. Because if we really acted with the amount of rage and the amount of hurt that bubbles within us, there really wouldn't be any buildings left. You know, there's still Black people that are like, oh no, don't do that, don't tear down these buildings. You know, there's still Black people that are, you know, being a lot more mellow. But those people are hurting too. If the entire Black community came and acted with all the rage within us, the white community wouldn't even have platforms to say stop rioting, because everything would be done for. So I think, like I just said, whatever we have to do, if it means violence, if it works, do it. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is better the world for ourselves, for our sisters, for our mothers, for our dads, and the people coming after us. And if this is what we have to do, then I think that's all well and good.
I totally agree with you. Things can be replaced, but lives cannot. And I think that's what people understand. The number one thing that people mention, you know, when talking about what's going on today, or at least when I speak to my white friends, they say, so you agree with, you know, the destruction of things. And I'm like, first of all, you can't speak on that. Unless you were out there or finding a solution to this, you can't judge those people for how they're grieving. I mean, like, when I ask you, what are you doing to help and what's a better way, you don't have an answer. So you can't necessarily say, y'all shouldn't be doing that. Y'all shouldn't be destroying things. My father's business, he has a restaurant, it was destroyed. Not destroyed completely, you know, there's just broken glass. Everything is fixable. And that's the biggest thing. Like, talking to him, he's okay with it, because at the end of the day, he knows there's insurance, you know, things are things and they can be replaced. And, you know, he understands the root of where it's coming from. And I feel like if he's not mad at somebody whose business was destroyed, you have no reason to be mad. If nothing that, you know, it's not even affecting you personally. So you shouldn't be, you know, upset about it. You should let us grieve.
Also, let's not be so quick to forget history. When have whites in history ever used peaceful methods to attain the things that they want? These are not all the examples, but just the larger ones that everyone should be able to, you know, slavery, forcibly removing Native Americans from their lands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. So I really don't understand the Revolutionary War even. So why now is it, oh, well, you know, peace this, like where was that before?
Like, what do people think no justice, no peace means? You know, I agree with the looting at least to some degree. You know, it's purposeful, it has a message, and it has a meaning. My problem begins with the undercover cops and the white supremacists who are hijacking the movement and the message and, you know, using this as an opportunity to, you know, receive belongings or to torch low-income housing.
Another thing to consider, like, these are like multi-billion-dollar corporations that a lot of these people are looting. And like, honestly, the most these companies have done is maybe put out a statement on social media saying we stand with the Black community, but honestly have not taken any steps further than that to like help out with the issue. They haven't donated, they haven't changed anything within their structures. So like, if it takes taking all their stuff for them to like wake up and realize that like y'all actually have to do something, then by all means that should be like an avenue that everyone should take.
I think it's very important that us as Ivy League students talk about this and debunk like this respectability politics within the Black community that I've been seeing amongst like just, I guess, people who feel like they, you know, the people who feel like, oh, I'm better than like the people looting, like we're scholars or like we're business owners, like we're high up in the Black community, like we should not be doing this. Like, no, first of all, you can't tell anyone who's actually out there in the streets, actually working, putting in the work, what they can and cannot do when you are at home. That's my first point. My second point is, as a government major at Dartmouth, the U.S. has supports when people riot in other countries, when they're toppling, you know, governments who they don't like or leadership or politicians that they are against. You know, when it was the Arab Spring and those citizens and those people were outside saying, we don't want any more of this government, the U.S. was amplifying these messages, you know, they were on it, like good for them. But when people speak out now and are doing the same tactics and using the same methods to try to get change here, then it's, oh, like not on our soil, you know, it's always like not on our soil. Please don't do this. Like, don't ruin our businesses, like ruin their businesses. So I don't understand it. Like Target will come back. Like Target didn't fall. Target is still here. Like, you know, Target will be fine. As their CEO said in a message, like, we're good. We understand why people are upset. Now we should be moving forward and focusing on, like, the movement, what's actually taking place. Gucci is fine. Montclair is fine. And they were racist anyways. Like, so, like, we can move on.
The U.S. has supported other protests and other rallies, because it highlights that the problem isn't that the U.S. is against protests or against, you know, change, but they're against Black protests, they're against Black change, they're against Black people advocating for themselves. The example I always go to is whenever the Black Lives Matter movement advocated for, you know, gun rights, advocated for people to stop, you know, shooting us senselessly, they were told, you know, all lives matter, they were told, you know, Second Amendment and all that. However, when there was a tragic shooting in Florida and 3 white kids came and started saying the exact same thing, you know, gun rights, you know, regulate guns and all that, they were given the cover of Time magazine. You know, they were told, oh, this is amazing. You know, where did you guys think of this? And the Black people were just like, yo, what? Like, what? You've been saying this since, you know, since we stepped foot on in this country. So it just shows that whenever we try to protest at all, be it peaceful, that doesn't work. You know, if it's virtual, you'll have TikTok and you'll have Twitter and you'll have Instagram take down posts when Black people are trying to advocate for themselves. And if it's quote unquote violent, then that's a problem too. So it's not the protest, it's the people. And because we know that, let's just continue protesting, because they're gonna try to shoot us down. They're gonna try to invalidate us regardless of what we do.
Another thing is, like, white people are always gonna take an issue with whatever avenue we take. Whether it's peaceful protests, they're gonna call you a coward. Whether it's violent protests, they're gonna say y'all are ruining things, you're breaking things. And I honestly think it's up to us to like stop caring about like what white people think and start doing exactly what's best for us and like our communities.
I also just wanted to bring up a point that I heard this morning by TV talk show host Shannon Sharp, when he said that Black people have never had a history of perpetuating violence against the white community. Our actions have always been a reaction to violence that's been perpetuated against us. Them trying to demonize us as this violent race, as this race that's always trying to cause something, is completely non-factual. Our problem is that they never want to get to the cause of these protests. They always want to see the actual, they always want to focus on the actions that we're taking and never want to talk about what we're trying to get them to focus on.
I just think regardless of whether we're protesting or not, we're still being killed. We weren't protesting a month ago and they still killed Black people. it doesn't matter if we're going out there and we're destroying things. They're going to demonize us regardless. So at least now we're doing something. We're speaking out against it. Now we're getting the attention that we need.
And if you get a Gucci bag while doing it, like, kudos to you. That's where I'm at with it.
Also, I think it's pretty crazy. Like, they would rather like call out the troops, the National Guards, bring out the big guns than arrest 4 officers.
This is outside of Black Lives Matters, but like in a relationship sense, does this make you want to marry a Black spouse so you don't have to always be explaining yourself to somebody? You're not always trying to prove your point. How do you guys think about that side of it?
I'll start off. This is like totally, separate from Black Lives Matter and what's going on. I personally wouldn't take a white person serious in a relationship, only because they just flat out don't understand my experience. And I don't necessarily trust that, they have the same upbringing and beliefs that I do. And I think that's kind of a deal breaker for me. And not to mention I'm an athlete and I don't even want to deal with all the stuff that comes with too. So I'll stay away from them.
Mixed race couples, you sometimes have the issues with either the white mom or the white dad not really knowing how to raise a Black child. And that kind of like brought us all to the conclusion that like at the end of the day, we are going to want to marry a Black woman. I think it just really uncomplicates the situation, makes things easier, if that makes any sense. So
I agree with everything Ryan and Florian just said. Ryan was, wow, I did not expect you to be that honest. I have a couple of friends who are in interracial relationships, and just seeing, I guess, the inability of the white, partner to really engage with what's going on now. Kind of like I wouldn't want to be in that situation myself. If I'm going through what we're going through right now as a community, and my partner literally cannot comprehend the extent of my pain and the extent of what I'm going through and the extent of my fear, I just wouldn't want to be in that situation.
It would be so emotionally exhausting to try to explain everything that I feel, and I don't want that. It's a huge burden. So that's why I feel like I would probably not date outside of my race because of that.
I think Black women are expected like to marry a Black man, while I think when it comes to the reverse, people are very accepting, I think, from just what I've seen. But don't act shocked now.
This will be a whole different conversation. I have these conversations all the time. This will be a whole nother conversation.
I don't know about all
yeah,
that.
it is.
I don't know about all that.
No, this is a whole like video if you really want to get into.
Yeah, this is a whole nother week. So personally, I deleted Instagram and Twitter off of my phone just so I could like remove myself from it just mentally a little bit. I don't think it is very beneficial to have the only information that you're taking in be all this violence and all this negativity, because I think that has some sort of negative effect on your mental health.
So I think like having those conversations, like group chats, like on FaceTime with the other Black friends, is also really helpful to like navigate the times that we're in right now.
For me, I think that journaling has always been my therapy. I've journaled since I was in the 5th grade, and especially during times like this, it really helps me figure out how to put in words how I feel.
Dartmouth is still in school, so I'm going through finals like during this phase and during this moment, which it's just a lot. And I also work full time, so it's just like you have to wake up, you have to like be aware of what your community is going through, making sure that you're still like taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do.
Cut off times where I'm not looking at social media. Similar to what Florian was saying, I try not to look at it right before bed or right as soon as I wake up, because I want to be present. I know that, but I know that if I start reading at night, I'm going to be up all night thinking about everything that's happening. Like last night, I was up all night just reading stories and constantly feeling exhausted from all of these things and feeling like I wasn't doing enough. So just be nice to yourself right now. It's okay to not see everything. It's okay to not read every single Twitter thing. It'll be there when you get back. I promise it'll be there when you get back.
My last question is, if you could add your voice to the millions of people asking for justice right now, what would you say?
I think we should definitely be thinking about the fact that like we're probably living in probably one of the most historic moments that we've seen in the past couple of years. And I think we should really start asking ourselves, especially as Black people, what are we going to be telling our kids that we did during this time? And I think if we ask ourselves that question, we're going to be faced with the questions of, am I going to be on the sidelines and allow all these things to pass me by, or am I actually going to do everything I can to be able to support the cause and just be present in terms of like donating and just having the resources out there to like help further this movement, because it's really important to us and to like everyone else that will come after us.
Recognize that everybody can do something. Even if you can't go out there and protest, you can sign petitions, you can donate, you can advocate, you can use your platform to spread awareness. So definitely make sure you're doing something.
You can do so much. You don't have to be on the front lines if that's not you, or if you don't feel safe.
For sure. And I would say, if just honestly for everyone, if you think what happened in Minnesota was injustice, then you should be doing something. Just because you may not agree with, the protests that are going on right now, pick another avenue. There's always something and there's always a way that you can help. So just remain proactive, honestly.
Don't forget to recharge and make sure that we continue the fight.
So that pretty much concludes the kickback conversation for today. These same 8 people are going to be back here on Friday to talk about being Black in an Ivy League. If you have any questions about this topic or about being Black in an Ivy League, put it in the comment section and we will address it in this Zoom call. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Bye.
If you can donate, please do so, and also spread awareness about what's going on. In the description box, I'm going to leave several foundations that you can donate to. Otherwise, please stay safe and do your part. Bye, guys.